Okay, welcome to the podcast. We have a special guest today. Her name is Alex Geudon. We actually know each other from many, many years ago down in Oxfordshire. But before we get to that, Alex is an equine therapist. She focuses on the whole horse, which is very in alignment with what we talk about, what I preach about, and also how I treat. Her aim is to support horses, their owners, in building balance and health. So, Alex, welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to have you here.
Hi, Nika. Thank you so much for having me. I feel very privileged to be here. My first podcast, so hopefully I'm getting this right. But let's have a go.
So, let's get straight into it. Can you share a little bit about your journey, what first led you into this world of equine therapy and holistic horse health?
Mm. Yes, I guess that's quite an easy one to answer. I don't think I've sort of been led into it at all. I think it's always been part of me. I think it's kind of how I grew up back home in Germany. My grandparents, my granddad, he was responsible for me from the age of 9 months to 9 years old. And being an older generation, I guess they were treating each other in folk medicine. It was natural medicine. The whole sort of pharmaceutical side of things wasn't really part of their lives. And in fact, my granddad he was injured in the war. He was brought in to be a tank driver where he sustained injuries, and he was in Russian captivity, and these injuries stayed with him. So he had to have daily treatments and so on. And he would always say to me, "I don't want to go to the hospital. That's where they kill you off." And I guess these are the sort of words that kind of stuck with me. So from an early age, early childhood, I was never keen on sort of going to the doctor or to the hospital. Yeah, so I think that's where it probably all kind of started. It was all part of my upbringing. The same. My mother, it obviously rubbed off on her as well. I used to be having lots of tonsillitis when I was younger, and there was a point where they said, "Oh, the doctor said you have to remove the tonsils and so on." And my mother was instantly like, "No, we're not doing that. We're not doing any surgery. You're not removing anything." And she did a bit of research into it, and it transpires the tonsils are part of your immune system, your immune response. So yeah, I guess my whole journey of holistic natural treatment started in my childhood already. So did my love for horses, as my granddad, before he got into the war. He worked at Stad Trakehnen. So the Trakehner horses come from there, which, a famous breed of horses. People know about them. So that was in East Prussia, which is now taken over by the Russians, but it was Germany then. Um, and yeah, my granddad would talk to me about horses, like a lot, because he was really passionate about them. He worked there as a carriage. I don't know what you call it, like a blacksmith maintaining the carriages for the horses. So he didn't have horses. He wasn't a rider. He was just employed there, but he was just really fascinated by the horses, and he saw them every day, and he found them really beautiful. And my mother claims that this is the reason why I have, started loving horses from the age of 6 years old and been obsessed ever since, and nothing has changed a long, long, long time later. So yeah, I guess that's where it all started. So it wasn't like I want to now be an equine therapist and nutritionally or naturally start treating horses. It was just a natural thing that just happened because that
Mm.
was always for me the answer
In the
of
upbringing.
in the upbringing, and it was the first thing I looked into it. Um, so yeah, I guess that
Do
answers.
you remember back, you might not, and with your grandfather, was there any remedy or something where you were like, oh my gosh, was it herbs? What were these special things or remedies or
Yeah, I think a lot of it was sort of if you have a cold or something, you wouldn't just have a Calpol. You would have like milk with honey and things like that, natural, have a chamomile tea, or if you have a fever, you have a cold towel on your head. Uh, that sort of thing, rather than, taking pharmaceuticals, which seems to be the common go-to these days.
Mm,
The body has a fever because there's a reason for it. The body is giving you information, it is healing something. So it's
mm,
not about stopping the fever, it's starting to understand why you're having that symptom. Um,
mm,
and I think that is, the sort of approach, how the body works. And if we start asking these questions more frequently about what happens to our horses as well, why is the horse lame? The horse isn't lame, there's a reason. Where does it come from? And then it's our job to find this reason. And usually it's complex, interlayered,
mm.
and the secondary symptom rather than even the first.
And it's welcome to the rabbit hole, right? And in today's kind of busy, fast-paced, easy, distracted world that we live in, it's actually quite refreshing to hear where you've come from with even your grandfather. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing to have heard more of his stories or, things like that, that nowadays would really be quite special because I feel like it's very much about quick fix, take a pill, do this,
Yeah,
almost do exactly the opposite of what our body's asking to be
yeah,
listened, to be heard.
yeah,
So I know obviously we met with through your mare actually, um, Ella. She's
yeah.
played a big role in your story. So could you tell us a little bit about her and kind of how she has shaped the way that you look at horses, health and expanded this healing that we've been talking about?
Yeah. Gosh, where do I start? The last 10 years in 5 minutes. Well, Um, so Ella I've known from literally in utero because I was actually there when the breeder discussed the covering with the stallion. I hadn't really met her mother at the time. Her dad's a Frisian, and that was kind of, really exciting. We saw him at the high profile show in Addington, where he did his first Grand Prix International, which for Frisian is not the common thing. You think of them as pulling a carriage, not doing an international Grand Prix. And Anders is actually Anders 451 is his name, has actually gone to represent South Africa in the World Equestrian Games as one of the only Frisians who achieved that. So
Goodness me,
that's
I did not know that.
yeah, and we went to France to Cannes to watch him, and that was really cool. Um, yeah, so Ella was living at the start where she was born. And it was important to me, that she grows up in a herd environment, has a natural upbringing, and so on. But when she was about 18 months old, the breeder had already purchased her, but the breeder said, Alex, you have to take her now because I'm selling the facilities, I'm selling the stud. I'm like, okay, fine. So Ella came over to where we live, but at the time I didn't have my own land, my own stables, so she went on a grass livery, and quite early on, it was fairly obvious that she wasn't your average horse. She would sort of walk through the fencing and find things to do herself. Yeah, so she's always been a bit of a character. When she was about 2.5 years old, eventually we got our place and she came home. Just previously, before that happened, she lived with on a sort of young stock livery with a national horsemanship lady, and she had an incident with her. She couldn't put the head collar on, and some kind of accident happened. I never really fully got down to the story. But 10 years, 12 years on is very interesting because you will find this is a symptom to a lot of these metabolic horses. They don't like the ears suddenly being touched. So, again, it makes you wonder why. When these horses are young, people always go, "Oh, it's a young horse thing, it's a young horse thing," and, it's to do with training, and they're not. No, it is not. There's much more to it. The other youngster, who's now 4, I had displayed very similarly. And is actually to do with the nervous system and the fascia and potentially the vagus nerve because it is all around this area. I don't know the ins and outs, but there's definitely something to it because it's happened too many times in these metabolic courses, to follow
Mm.
the exact thing for it to be a coincidence. It can't be. But it,
Mm.
it was very interesting. At the time, I didn't know any of these things. So Ella came home. Ella was very cheeky. Ella didn't want to be caught. No one could touch her head. No one could put the head collar off. And here we were. And yeah, she was very, very difficult. I remember one instance I couldn't catch her, and I was running down the house making dinner because the children were young, and then my head was bright red. And my husband came home and said, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Oh, the mare, I can't catch her." I just left her out after an hour and a half trying. Anyway, I think this was the start of the love of my life, really, because this is when we really bonded. Everything started unknowingly then, and my love for her grew hugely. And yeah, she's really, really cool, despite all her physical problems she has. She is the best horse on the planet. Yeah, so 2.5 years, 3 years old, she started having slipping stifles. So all the little things already started, which always get brushed off. Oh yeah, try and back her up, try and do this, but no one understood the connection. When she was about 5, we backed her. When she was 4, she didn't care if anyone sat on her back, but she couldn't turn right. On the lunge, she was completely fine. The minute you ask her to go off the lunge, she refused to turn right. She literally, at one point, she even reared up and fell over backwards with the rider on. So, one of those really big things where I still think, did she injure herself at that point? She never went lame, nothing ever happened. Um, yeah, exactly. So by the time she was 5.5, I started riding her myself, and it was horrendous. She would literally run and run and run, and the more you rode her, the more she started running. Now, some people might describe that as a forward horse, a young horse that's really forward. But no, it wasn't a good forward energy. It was a negative energy. It was trying to run away. And usually, you start off, the horse may be a bit forward, then you get your leg on and they come back to you. That never happened. It was always the opposite. She became faster and faster and tried to get away from the feeling. So again, it's a symptom of something isn't right. And it had nothing to do with her being young. Yes, she was inexperienced, but this went on for 18 months. I couldn't canter her. Every time I cantered her, I literally couldn't walk for 2 days. It jarred my back so badly. We had the bunny hopping, the counter canter. She couldn't go forward. There was no flow from front to back. All of these things, these are all symptoms and they're not normal. But no one understood it at the time. By the time, and she wasn't ridden every day, was young horse stuff, half an hour here and there, 3, 4 times a week. Sort of everything was done with, the right things with the horse in mind as a 5-year-old. By the time she was about 5, 5.5, 6, she was insanely aggressive. Like really, she's broken my rib by just biting. Yeah, she was very, very aggressive. There was so much going on. The first vet told me to put her to sleep or give her to the dealer. I was like, whoa, okay, that's not going to happen. So I had another vet opinion. The second vet said, I don't think I can help you with this. Every time we flexed her legs, on the right hind, she would literally bolt, but no one could ever see any lameness. The right hind would virtually foot forward to the left fore diagonally. It was the strangest thing. She had all the x-rays, all the workup, everything done, everything checked. There was nothing wrong with the horse. The bloods were fine. The horse was completely fine on paper. but in front of you, you had a very angry, aggressive, clearly in pain horse, but clinically, nothing could be found. Um, so the third vet then did anti-Malarian hormone blood tests sent to America. So after many, many, many months of discussions and trying to find out what's wrong with Ella, it was decided that is ovarian pain. She's going to have her ovaries removed, and that would resolve her and get her out of this complete misery she has to live every day. Okay, with a very, very heavy heart, I agreed to have that done, which I regret to this day. So this is nearly 10 years on. So she had the surgery, 3 months post-surgery. She was terrible at healing. She really didn't heal. Um, it was awful, the whole process. 3 months on, I was starting her again. I was supposed to start riding her again, and all the symptoms returned. So now we spent all this money, put her all through this pain, and we were virtually where we started. It was just awful. And this was the point when I was out because nothing I was expected, told, and none of the dots were actually meeting at
Mm.
all. Um, so after that, I didn't see a vet for 3.5 years, and I just started finding my own way because
Mhm.
I was so disappointed in everything, and I just couldn't understand why nobody could answer it. I was
Mhm.
in the hospital. Um, she was being prepared for the next day, being staffed, and all that sort of stuff that has to go. And her right eye would twitch, and the right eyelid would twitch down. And
Mm.
I asked, "What is that? Why is she doing that?" And rather than receiving an answer, it was like I got looked through me, like
Mm.
like I wasn't even there. It was the strangest thing. Now it's very clear it's the autonomic nervous system, and that is very much reliant on vitamin B1, thiamine, and if the hindgut can't produce that, then the horse is lacking that B vitamin. But at the
Mm.
time, I didn't understand that. Um, so yeah, so where were we? Yes, so then I was pretty much like, okay, what am I gonna do next? So I started researching. I did the equibiome fecal sample to
Mhm.
try and get an understanding what's going on. So, early on in the journey, the hindgut is what's really important and gives you information. Now, equine only just started up. I think I was one of the first people who did the test.
Mhm.
I received some kind of 5 meter long Excel spreadsheet with a load of words on it I couldn't understand.
Mm.
And I didn't actually understand them until just gone Christmas, where I did an online webinar which was run by Equibiome. And 8 years on, they gathered a lot of intelligence and a lot of information. So it was really interesting where they could explain and see different scenarios, different imbalances, and how they impact the body. That, no one understands how the microbial balance is supposed to be. Even the
Mm.
microbiome, the fungal fungus, the yeast, and everything interacts. No one really understands what the interaction is. But there
Mm.
is information, there is an intelligence of understanding if things come off balance and if certain bacteria are overgrown, certain things happen to the body. Like it's known that respiratory issues come from the hindgut, from the microbiome, from certain microbes that aren't in balance or they have overgrown. Like insulin resistant horses, referred to as EMS in common language. Same thing, there is knowledge. In Ella's case, it was a lot about inflammation. The
Mm.
bacteria that causes inflammation was just like massively raised. But no one really understood why and
Mm.
how, it was good information, but it didn't really give the answers at the time. But this is how I started. And one of the things um, which was highlighted was she had a lot of pathogens in there. Borrelia, Bartonella, And so I went down that path. And from there on, I started going down the traditional Chinese medicine route and
Mhm.
started working with TCM herbs. And within 3 months of using these herbs, the aggression stopped. She wasn't
Wow.
aggressive anymore. I could touch her. She stopped trying to bite me, because she was so sensitive to touch. Like even
Mm.
just walking into her space, she became angry, aggressive. She was depressed. I mean, it was really, really sad not having any answers why, while all of these things are happening. And I literally tried everything, like everyone does. We all try and find the best,
Trying our best.
yeah, to the horses because,
Mhm.
they're our kids. We love them dearly and we want them to do well. So that was sort of the first step into the holistic healing journey and starting to understand. I did a lot of, like my husband would say, I'm like a dog with a bone. If I get into something, then that is it. I'm not
You're
going to
off.
stop until I have the answers. So I was reading loads about pathogens, bacteria, how they interact, how they live, and we all have them. They all live
Mhm.
in us. Yeah, they all live in the horses as well. So they're part of our lives. They're part of what keeps our immune system active, ticking. Again, problems only start when they start overgrowing, when they become too many of themselves, when the environment in the gut system is too ideal for them to reproduce.
Mm.
Then, if you have leaky gut syndrome, which very often goes in line with metabolic disorders, where the mucosal membrane cannot regenerate itself due to the lack of nutrients, due to the constant inflammation, which comes generally from an acidic environment. So then these pathogens, they have engines and hooks. I know it sounds a bit weird, but then they burrow through the gut wall and so they enter the bloodstream. And that's how the pathogens then, go into the bloodstream, into the body. They bury themselves into red blood cells, and that's how they get around the whole system. They build biofilms, which is not penetrable by antibiotics, and that's how they start taking over. So I did a lot of research on that, and it was really interesting. All the sort of Chinese herbs like Japanese knotweed, cat's claw, there's loads of them. Start penetrating the biofilm. But then it's not just a case of getting rid of the biofilm and killing the pathogen, because once you kill the pathogens, other things happen, and that's toxins will start to develop. And so you have to also be mindful and use herbs or certain amino acids, activate certain systems in the body so that they can be dealt with and binding is happening and so on. Um,
So, Alex, can I just ask you there because this is a question that a few people do ask myself, um, and it will be along the lines of talking about toxins. So, I hear a lot of words being thrown around like detox the liver because of toxins. Do
yeah.
you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Well, that's a really big subject, and I'm not trained in biochemistry. I'm not a biochemist, but in sort of general knowledge, toxins come from everywhere. Yeah, toxins from your environment, from potentially stuff you eat, your own cells break down, everything becomes waste, cellular waste, and that has to be dealt with. Now, if you then also have bacterial infections, pathogens, and if you try and deal with them, if there's too much die-off, then you experience something called a Herxheimer effect, which means your body's overwhelmed and it cannot deal with that amount of die-off. Then you have to dial it back. Um, in terms of the liver, well, the liver holds a lot of toxins. The body holds the toxins in the horses, in the connective tissue. Well, in the people, it's much the same. And that is when the systems are overwhelmed. The liver's overwhelmed, the kidneys can't remove enough, too much oxidative stress, and the gut system is overwhelmed. The bile acid isn't working well enough, it isn't removing. So in my training, we don't really touch the liver. because that is the last thing you want to do is release the toxins from the liver until all the other systems start working. I've recently done some training on human products as well. And the system is also on TCM based, and it's exactly the same for humans. You don't want to release the toxins from the liver to begin with. First, you need to cleanse the gut system, make sure your bile acid is moving, make sure the nutrients are produced, and your kidneys can remove the waste product accordingly before you want to add more to it, because otherwise you end up with some kind of rebound effect. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I obviously know we're not going to go into a lot of detail. It's a topic on its own. It's just a very common question I get asked is, should we now detox the liver? And you see even products, supplements nowadays for horses marketed as detox the liver,
Yeah.
which, yeah, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, well, it causes more problems if your detox pathways aren't open, you know. So first you need to open your detox pathways before you want to release more toxins. I
Hmm.
think that's possibly the easiest answer to
Great.
that.
Yeah, that's great. So we're going back to Ella. Um, this particular moment is one of the questions that I was thinking with this change in her, with that three
Mm.
months, and you notice the change in the
No,
aggression.
not really. The whole thing, the whole Chinese medicine with her did it for like nearly 18 months.
Mm.
It goes on a very long time. You know, it's not a sprint. It's really a marathon to get on top of these metabolic issues, especially if they're as severe as hers were. And that was really at the beginning of my learning journey. So this is like 8 years ago now.
Mhm.
Yeah, but she taught me so much. So many things happened. So the diet I was recommended to feed alongside the herbs wasn't good, which I know now. I didn't know at the time. That was causing more problems, on the herbs itself. There was lots of good stuff happening, but there was also not so good things happening. She started abscessing, um, coughing. So a lot of things like the body removes toxins through any orifices, you
I
know.
was gonna say abscesses
Ears,
in most
ears,
cases.
abscesses, toxins, even the ears having like sticky things coming out of ears, the 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 smegma in the sheath with the gelding between the teats of the mare. This is all a sign of toxins being pushed through the body. Yeah. And when you start treating, I've had an interesting conversation with a client on Saturday, and quite a compromised horse as well. And she said, "Oh, I don't know whether it's related, but his sheath used to be so dirty, and the sheath cleaner would come, and it was so painful for him, and we had to do all of these things. And since I've been doing the protocols you've recommended, it's really weird, but his sheath is kind of normal now." Right? So all of these things are part of the detoxification systems not working properly and the horse not able to remove the toxins accordingly. So yeah, so Ella started abscessing, which was really weird. She'd never done it before. She showed me because she's very good at teaching me everything. And I think at that point I became obsessed with the lymphatic system and like literally obsessed because it's almost like I couldn't find the information. It's like it's hidden, right? And the more I was being not blocked, obviously, but the more I felt like I can't find the stuff, I can't find it, the more obsessed I got with it. So I went down this whole rabbit hole about the lymphatic system, and I was literally researching it every single day. And I even said to the TCM practitioner, I said, the horse can't detox. I don't know what's going on. She said, you're crazy. I said, I'm not. The horse can't detox. There's something not going on. I don't understand. So that was one of the real eye-openers at the time. Why can't the horse detox? And it was exactly what Ella couldn't do. And it was exactly what all her problems stemmed from. Because her hindgut microbial balance was so unfortunate from I know her mother, who died of heart failure at the age of 19. Kidney heart regulates your water acid base level. So, she was born to a mother who was insulin dysregulated because Ella a blood sugar level of 6.3 is normal, which is why it's very difficult to always manage her because she can't be on much grass and it has to be the right sort of grass and it has to be the right sort of hay. But obviously, she needs to go out, she needs to move, she needs to be a horse. Um, and then she has a hindgut microbiota given by her mother, the wall standing hindgut microbiome, which was most likely through haylage feeding because her mum was born in Denmark. And I know a lot of history on her mum and other horses where they came from, which wasn't.
And this is very important, is it, Alex, to know this as a foundation, starting point?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that is very, very important because your hindgut microbiome will make your B complex. The symbiotic microbes make the vitamin B complex, they make the vitamin K, the non-essential, semi-essential amino acids. They're very, very, very important for the health of the body, for the whole metabolism to function and to work. I always think of the metabolic processes as as I said before, I'm not trained in biochemistry, but in basic terms, I think of it as like a domino chain. So if one domino piece is missing, the chain reaction cannot conclude. And once a piece is missing, then the body will bypass. And the body's very smart because the body's designed to heal. The body's designed to function. So the body will find other ways to continue functioning. And it will do this for really, really long time until it can't do it anymore. Which is what you often see in clients. They think the symptom that they see this happened yesterday or last week, this probably happened 5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Yeah. It takes a really, really long time until the body says, I can't do it anymore. And that's why you get the symptoms coming out. And then, yeah. Um, so hang on, where were we?
Just talking about the importance of knowing where the mare came from and understanding,
Oh, yes. So
what she was eating and then what the foal was eating.
yeah, so this is all very good information. It was important information that I learned later on, knowing where Ella's mum was, and because the foal, as everyone who has horses is aware of, the foal will eat mum's poo, and that way they will colonize their wall-standing hindgut microbiome. Obviously, if the mother mare is in dysbiosis meaning there's an imbalance in microbes, whatever that might be, there are different types of imbalances that can happen, but that will then embed itself into the foal. And this process is finished when the foal is around 4 or 5 months old, and it cannot be changed anymore. So it can only then be managed.
And that's the key point there, right?
That's
Is
the key
that
point there.
really short window.
But that is a key point we have to mention here. This is not um, peer-reviewed, studied by veterinarian medicine, or proven in any shape or form. This is just in holistic therapy, what is known. It's just the same in humans. When the mother gives birth to a child, the birth canal, the baby going through, has a microbial um, balance. And this microbial balance will go into the baby when the baby is born and goes through the birth canal. There is research that children who are born by cesarean don't have a strong immunity, same as when you don't breastfeed the child. This is all part of nature, it's designed by nature. I know the hospital needs to make money and finance itself, and that's why you have to have so many cesareans a month. That's a different scenario. But, nature has set this up for the health of the mammal, the human, the horse.
Humanity.
Yeah. But it's all part of having a healthy life. It's all part of how your whole biochemistry, how your metabolism is supposed to work.
Yeah, for sure. And you answered my next thing, which was like it's the same in humans. Like it's
Humans.
not peer-reviewed research in horses yet, but it's coming. It's got to come, right? Because there's too many of these symptomatic horses,
Oh, it's
problem
very crazy.
horses.
Going, this is what I said. This is really at the beginning when the whole journey started with Ella, what I said to myself is like, this is crazy. I grew up with horses. I lived with horses. I started riding when I was 6 years old. I would go to the stables every Saturday. From the age of 8, I would go and ride Norwegian ponies in a heckamore and bareback, and we just bomb around the countryside. We take them swimming. We do all of those things when I was I think 12. I wanted to ride properly, and so I went to the riding school and I couldn't sit in a saddle, and I was really disappointed because I couldn't hold on to the stirrups because I've been riding bareback, but I was very good at vaulting. Um, but the horses weren't like that. Horses weren't ill like that, like they are now. Literally every horse is on the spectrum of some kind of metabolic issue. And 30 years ago, that didn't exist. But 30 years
Mm,
ago, we didn't have all this sort of commercial feed stuff. We didn't have haylage, wrapped hay. I mean, what on earth is that? Pickled hay. Put a bread in a bag, take a bread, put it in a plastic bag, and then look at it 3 weeks later. What do
mm,
you think might happen to it?
mm,
You probably find it's blue. Yeah?
mm,
What do you think is going to happen to the hay that's sitting in this plastic bag in 35-degree heat, um, storms, God knows what, for a year on? And then you go, oh, I'd like to give that to my horse. No, you really
mm,
don't want to do that. Okay.
mm,
Um, yeah, so it is all very strange. I mean, we had basic feed then. I think all we had was like oats, some kind of pellet mixture, and that was it. There might be in winter, someone would be making up a bran or cooking some linseed or things like
mm,
that.
mm,
But it was very, very, very simple. And the horse's digestive system hasn't changed. It hasn't suddenly become something different.
mm.
They're hindgut fermenters and they need the celluloase from the grass, from the hay to break down to make the energy.
Mm.
From what I understand, the scientists don't even fully understand how they do that.
Okay. I think it's also that change in, I very much resonate. Someone who grew up in South Africa, riding my pony, bareback, bridleless, taught me how to balance, taught me how to use my seat. Hands were not even there. And I think also the big change, along with what you're currently saying, is also the huge demand in sports horses, Europe, horses being flown across overseas and things like that. And obviously, absolute zero consideration to what you've described earlier about where were they born? What
Yeah.
did they first do in those first 6 months? What did they eat? And that is something that I don't know many people, and never mind talking about. In general conversation. And I'm seeing a lot of oh, she was bought from Holland, she was bought from here. Well, we're now in Ireland or we're now in Dubai. And now the horse is constantly lame, overweight. Are they overweight or are they inflamed? And it's just the constant patterns that I'm seeing as someone who travels the world, where I'm like, this isn't just a symptom of performance or even this lameness, mysterious lameness that's coming, recurring, intermittent. It's the thing about the thing. It's the
Yeah.
why, the questioning, as we said, is so important, the whys. Listening to the behavior because there is never coincidental behavior that I believe they're very black and white. They very much have nothing to hide. So they're going to tell you how it is. It's just unfortunate our understanding and catching up with their systems.
A classical example, look at the Spanish horses. Europeans from here, they're like, oh, I want to have one of these really cool Spanish horses. And they look at them and go, oh, they're really easy. Look at these people. They do all this stuff with them. They're like a really easy horse. Now, the environment they grow up in is very, very different to our environment, you know? So the microbiome of the mother is developed in the used to that environment. That's where she lives. That is what she eats. They don't have green grass or, really rich shrubs and a lot of rain and things like that. They have dry shrubs. So it's a very, very different type of environment. Then, the Spanish breeders are aware of, the people over here looking for big chunky looking Spanish horses. Now they make a 3, 4-year-old look like a 10-year-old by just feeding them up with unsuitable feed stuff. They look muscled, but they're not. They're just very, very lymphatic. And then they come over here. Their whole microbiome is now all over the place from all the different feed stuff they've been given. Everything has been rushed. They've been forced to do things. They're very, very young. They arrive here. People give them time, which is great. Then they give them green grass, which is not great. And then by the time they're 5 years old, you see all of these metabolic issues all starting off. And there's a reason for it. That doesn't just happen. There is a reason for it. And if you work backwards and look at what these horses need, then there's quite a lot we can do to help them, really.
Mm. And how has your understanding of gut health changed the way that you assess and support horses in your work today?
Well, this is again, each case is really individual. Like when I got my young mare, she's 4 now, so I bought her out of this difficult situation for like, yeah, literally designer handbag money, but I knew she was in a bad way when we went to see her. And I thought to myself, oh well, nothing can be worse than Ella. I fixed Ella. I can do this one. Oh dear, little do I know. It sent me down a whole new path of learning. Even though they display the same symptoms, they have the same issues, and the root cause, the hindgut microbiome isn't right, is also the same. But with Jubilee, it was all about trauma because she was starved, right? She didn't have any food, which is all the sort of things I found out later. A lady sent me a whole list of what happened to her. Like she was stood in mountains of mold. The guy never mucked her out. She wasn't cared for. He had no money, so she wasn't given any forage. And the forage she was given was haylage without the wrapper. I was like, oh my goodness. So the first 18 months, I literally just spent removing parasites from her because she was so full of them and she was insanely aggressive. I think for like 2 years, she just attacked me. In the first, so I got her in April, the following February, she was 16-month old. She had a neurological colic. That was interesting. She was literally just spinning in a circle and stopping and kicking and rearing. And no one's ever seen anything like it before, including the vet. Um, yeah, so I did a bioresonance, which I know is not very common here and sometimes a bit frowned upon. But in this case, it was literally amazing because I already had a lot of history and it
Can you
showed.
just explain it to people listening, going, oh, never heard of that before?
Okay, so you just send a hair sample, and then a colleague of mine kindly offered to analyze the hair, and there you can really analyze through frequencies exactly what's been happening in the body, what's wrong, and there was so much on there. One was she had mold toxicity, which was already clear from the mycotoxins, which the lady had told me afterwards. And she also had a very high, she had Lyme's disease. And again, people always think Lyme's disease is acute from a tick bite. There's a real big difference to a chronic Lyme's disease and an acute one. So again, here it was chronic because she didn't have the forage, her gut system wasn't working. You know, if you're starving a horse, the horse constantly produces stomach acid, the bile acid is produced, but there's no food coming. So it just burns everything in the inside. The mucosal membrane again wears down, and the whole gut system is acidic. And she was literally in permanent stress. Then you have your cortisol gland is constantly overproducing too much cortisol, the adrenal gland, sorry, producing too much cortisol. So she was in permanent height or flight state constantly. Then if you think about the vagus nerve, one of the biggest cranial nerves, which goes from your brain down into your gut. And it basically checks into every major organ, your heart, your lungs, and gives information from the gut to the brain. You know, and none of that was working for her, none. You know, it was really awful. And it was just so sad. And I stood there again thinking, I don't know how to help you, you know, because it was so different. Ella never ever attacked me. Ella was ill, and but she always accepted my help with Jubilee because she didn't have much human handling. I don't know. She still had the foal capsule on when she was 11 months old. So she obviously didn't have a feed done or anything. She wasn't handled particularly well. She was scared of people, and then on top of it, she had all of these pains, metabolic issues, neurological issues. You know, there was so much going on this tiny little 11-month-old baby. Um, it was really hard. I had to dig really, really deep. Yeah, there were times where I wasn't sure whether it's actually fair to keep going because it was really, really difficult. At some point, I'd call it Tourette's. She would literally just stand in the pen, rear up, walk backwards, and kick out randomly. It was like electroshocks hit her, and no one could see what was going on. So yeah, so the first so in last year in July I had a breakthrough. I was consulting with a TCM practitioner in Belgium, who also does a lot of energy work, and she doesn't speak English. So we were communicating via Translate, but she was really great, and she recommended some medicinal mushrooms, and they were particularly designed for mycotoxins, and that was really the breakthrough last year in July. After I run her through that course, I could tell she was changing. She was getting better. And
Wow.
yeah, everything I tried before, nothing really worked. I mean, her liver was so overwhelmed, she would have like literally yellow goo coming out of her eyes because she just couldn't deal with anything. On the bioresonance, there was herpes, Epstein-Barr, all the viruses, everything we carry, but everything was like active in her. So it took me a really long time, as we say, to take the layers off the onions and get through to it. At the moment, she's on her third week of Lyme's herbs, which kindly got from Silver Lining Herbs, which has been absolutely amazing. I could already tell on day 10. On day 10, I could go in the stable without putting a head collar on. I can now put a rug on. I can pick out her feet. All the normal things you should be doing, it wasn't possible. You know, she would kill you. She she literally would attack you. She was so aggressive. It's really hard to imagine.
Mm.
But I always knew she's the kindest person inside there, and it broke my heart at one point. I remember standing in the stable. I was literally boiling my eyes out. I was like, I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to continue. And then luckily I had the breakthrough with the medicinal mushrooms. And that
Giving
changed.
me it's giving me goosebumps, just
Well,
that
this was when I got the message from the
breaking point.
lady, and
Mm.
she explained everything the way she was kept. She wasn't allowed in the field because they were
Ah,
worried about her hurting herself, and she was this investment, and all of those things. And once I got all the message and all
information.
the information, I was like, wow, this is it. Now I know what to do. And it was like a eureka moment, and all of a sudden I could put it into order in combination with the bioresonance, and since then she's been making amazing amazing progress. And now another 2 years, I think, and then she'll be good. And she has Ella to thank for that because all my knowledge, everything Ella taught me, I've been able to give to her from an early age, and hopefully that really will prevent long-standing issues.
Mm.
With Ella, we can't change it now. The fact that she has got no ovaries is going to cut her life short because there's
Mm.
something missing. The fascia has been cut.
Hmm.
When she's sort of sweating, for instance, or you can see the nerves in where the surgery scar is. It's just nothing is working
For
properly.
now, I know you're not an expert, as in a vet. For owners listening, because I come across a lot of hormonal mares. I'm saying it like this because I say when people say to me as a person I'm hormonal, I'm like, that's the symptom. Let's get to the root. Let's keep asking. But it's, you know, if someone was listening today saying my mare's going to go in for these ovaries removal, what is the root or question they should
Don't do
ask?
it.
Okay.
Well, I think you have to differentiate. Okay.
Mhm.
So if you have an enlarged ovary, if you have cellular cell tumors, anything like
I was
that,
gonna say tumor, yeah.
then of course that is the only route to take. You have to have it removed. Only remove one because the other ovary will still produce the hormones. They can still have a foal if they have only one ovary. I
Mm.
looked at Ella's ovaries after they had been removed because they asked me if I wanted to see them, and I asked them
Mhm.
whether they found any abnormalities. There weren't any.
Oh, okay.
There was
Okay.
nothing there. They were completely normal, which I was told also by the vet practice.
Okay.
In her case, her hindgut couldn't produce the nutrients. Yeah,
Hmm.
so vitamin B6 and zinc in combination makes the progesterone receptor, and she couldn't do any of that. And
Hmm.
and I always said the mare has kidney pain. And I was always told, no, you cannot have kidney pains because there are no nerve receptors on the kidneys. Yeah.
Hmm.
So physiologically, you cannot have kidney pain. But she did have kidney pain. And it's a referred pain. It's a referred pain where they lock the lumbar region off. And that is the kidney pain. Okay. So the acupuncture point for the stifles, the ovaries, and the kidneys are literally millimeters apart.
Hmm.
So then it was decided it cannot be her kidneys. It's gotta have to be the ovaries. But
Okay.
all her hormones were all over the shop. Nothing
Hmm.
nothing was normal.
Hmm.
So it was really almost impossible for anyone to make any sense of it. Who's trained in the Western system, because the
Yeah, yeah.
Western system is designed to treat symptoms
Hmm.
and not to look at the whole picture. And that is where the real difference is.
Hmm.
It's not saying one is bad, one is good. It is just very different. And one has to choose what,
Path.
what
Who's
works.
the root?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And for horse owners who feel like something isn't quite right, okay, they can't put their finger on why, what. They've had these intermittent lamenesses, the constant injections of the hocks and stifles, and it's short-lived. And another big pattern that I'm seeing is this diagonal that I see in a lot of horses nowadays that are behavioral, screaming, aggressive. I call it screaming when they're aggressive because I feel like they have no way else but to be that, to scream at us.
Yeah, well, I mean, this
Um,
this was what Jubilee was like. She was
yeah,
majorly aggressive,
yeah.
and there's many reasons for it. Once the physiology isn't working, and that has an effect on the nervous system because the nervous system B12, B1, autonomic nervous system is the ingredients are not there. The
Mhm.
ingredients are lacking. So that is one part. The other part is the nervous system doesn't feel safe. That's another really important part. So first you need to get on top of the biochemistry, make sure the body has all the ingredients it needs, and if there's pathogens who eat them away, then you have to remove the pathogens so that the nutrients can reach. We're also talking
Mhm.
trace minerals.
Mm.
the body, so the metabolic processes can be fulfilled. That is the first step. But then with trauma, it's not just that. You have to do more than that. You have to then find a way with the training or whatever you aiming to do to make the nervous system feel safe, to retrain
Mm.
it.
Mm.
And that's not going to happen overnight. It's a lot of repetitions, a lot of repetitions. And then when you get met with teeth and legs and angry eyes and striking out at front, at that point, you know, okay, everything is working, everything is toned down, but it's still happening. Then you mustn't be aggressive back. You must be calm. You must be
Mm.
grounded. You must give reassurance, not walk away, walk towards the horse. Make them feel safe. That is the most important thing. You have to make them feel safe so that the nervous system can learn, hey, I'm actually okay. And if you
Mhm.
repeat this over time, they will start feeling safe and then they will respond to you in the same way until eventually
Mm.
you will become one. And then
Mhm.
you're bound,
Mhm.
and then your nervous systems align. And that's when the
Mm.
partnership begins. And that's when the magic
Mhm.
happens.
That's it. That's why we do it, right?
Yeah,
For
that
those
is what
moments
it is.
when we're just with our horse and it's an unspoken
Yeah.
connection,
But
it
these
is that
mountains become
fulfillment,
bigger,
that joy.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
that is what you have to aim for. You start small, you have one good moment, and then you have another one, and before you know it, all these tiny little good moments become big, and then they become the norm. And that is
Mm.
the joy we should be aiming for. But the biochemistry has to work, the gut system has to work, the vagus nerve has to be calm and working and not constantly be in distress. Now, going back to your questions, how do owners know? And I think this is very, very difficult for people to understand because we are so taught to think, to pigeonhole everything, to think in everything in isolation. Yet everything is connected. Yeah. You and me, we met. We are going to be forever connected. Yeah.
Mm.
And every person you meet, you will always be connected to them on whatever level. Every horse you meet, everything is connected, and so is the body, and so are the all the systems in the body because one can't work without another. Every organ does lots of different jobs which interact with lots of different systems. And if you start to think in that way, then maybe that's easier to understand. I think it's really, really hard for people to tie up the dots, to understand how it all interlinks.
Mm.
Because unless you start thinking the nervous system and the body, like in Chinese medicine, are totally connected, it is really, really difficult to understand. How do I, how do we help people noticing that? I think I think what you have, yeah. So most people start looking at the musculoskeletal system because this is the lameness, the obvious reasons. Um, and from there on, if the biochemistry isn't working, the biomechanics can't work. So,
Mhm.
your hind gut is hung off on the lumbar region to the right. So the horse is heavy. So then you have a natural crookedness, right hind, left shoulder loading. That is
Mhm.
the natural thing that happens. But if we want to ride the horse, then we have to get them straight so they can weight bear equally. Obviously, they always weight bear a little bit more
Mm.
in the front than the back. But the idea is to shift the weight backwards so that we can sit in the center and the horse can carry us, build the muscle, take the weight off the joint, and take the rider's weight as well.
Mm.
If you cannot achieve that, then you know you have an issue.
Mm.
Yeah, and that usually connects back to the hind gut, left foreloading, tight left side, tight left TMJ. There's a lot of tension on the left TMJ. That then reflects on the jawline. You also see all these horses very tight in the muzzle. Um, they engage the homohyoid, which is the underneath neck muscle. These are the type of horses when you do your rug up and they try and bite you because their pecs are really, really tight. Then that makes you, the next thought is the hyoid. So the hyoid hung up on your TMJ. In German, it's called the tongue bone. These fascial connections go from the head into the flanks, and you have a top line, a mid-ventral line on either side. What often is thought of the girthiness is ulcers. I don't think it's directly ulcers. I think it's more to do with tight fascial lines that result from a GI tract system that isn't functioning. So it's indirectly, but not directly, and it's not just the stomach. I think it's also the short intestine where you can have a lot of inflammation and the hindgut, possibly due to acidity. But each case is individual, so you have to look at each case.
But definitely these, like I work a lot with it myself, is this pattern recognition because most owners, horse owners, lovers, if they really sit back and are with themselves, I'm going to sit in the field or stable with your horse, and you start to note down when this first little change happened, even if it was years ago, and some interaction or some behavior is becoming more apparent as the season is changing, because that's another thing. We expect the horse to be consistent 12 months of the year, and we're thinking, well, our bodies are not 12 consistent 12 months of the year. There's fluctuations, there's natural changes the body will go through in summer, winter, besides just the coat change. So I think if people sit down and start to map out, even if you don't have to be an expert in knowing the body, a lot of owners with questioning tell me so much that I'm like, you already know this. You
Yeah.
already have seen this. It's just for someone else to maybe say it back to you, but start to give you the connection. And that is often what I say to my owners is, if you've come to a point where you're like, this isn't working, and I've seen many horses where I'm like, this horse does not need chiropractic. This is a plaster that I'm doing. And actually, if I go and do an adjustment here, I'm doing the opposite of what the body is trying to do, which is protect itself. I want to
100%.
work with the body, I want to support. So for me, it's like owners sit down, map this out. Most of you already know. You have, even if it's a gut feeling, you've seen these behaviors.
100%. I totally agree. Everyone who comes to me is exactly the same. They already know there's something not quite right, but they can't join up the dots. And very often there's only a few little dots missing. And then once they go through the herbal protocols, and I say this to people, write a diary, write down. You know, I have a few people now who've been with me for 2 years. And it's really interesting because they will say to me, "Oh, I've been reading back through the emails. And actually, I said exactly the same thing I'm saying to you today 2 years ago. So the same thing happened 2 years ago, right? And now we're prepared. We know it's going to happen again. So these are the extreme cases where you can then be proactive and supplement with the right herbs at the right time before the symptoms happen, before the horse falls off the wagon, and then you have to pick up the pieces again. Yeah, no, I totally, absolutely agree. And at the end of the day, equine metabolic disorders, whatever type it might be, you have a problem in the pancreas, you have a problem in the hindgut, that's usually goes hand in hand. You have a problem anywhere in the metabolism. It comes down to management. You know, there isn't a magic potion how you can fix this. It really comes down in learning what the horse's weaknesses are. Is it sweetage? Is it salander malander? Is it mud fever? Is it coughing, respiratory, seasonal cough, or whatever it might be? It's a management, and it's a journey of learning where you need to address more what they can't have. Maybe they can't have too much grass because they can't ferment very well because their microbial balance isn't right from the start. They can't have short grass because the fructans are causing acidity issues again. You know, every horse is different, and every owner has to learn the weaknesses in their horse, and all of these metabolic issues come down to management. Yes, we can support with the herbs, and and it's wonderful, and I love it when I get messages and people tell me how much improvement they've made and how good the horse is doing now. It's literally the best thing in the world. I can't describe it. It's just a great feeling when you know you have been able to help this horse and this owner, and owners become so good at recognizing before it happens, and that puts their mind at ease because suddenly you've empowered them. They know now what to do, and you help them achieve this goal. And I think this is what drives me. This is why I do it, because it is just amazing to be able to be in a position to help everyone. And yeah,
Mm.
Ella's done a good job.
He has, and also you for not giving up because, as you, I'm sure, briefly only mentioned with us, I can imagine how much stress that caused yourself. And it's definitely part of owning a horse that none of us really prepare ourselves for, you know? It's something that is a journey, very hard journey. So also a credit to you for keep going, keep that curious mindset going. If someone wants to work with you, Alex, or find more about you, how can they contact you?
Mm. Well, I have the Facebook page, Alex Geudon, equine therapist. I've also just set up a website, www.equicircle.co.uk. You can contact me via that. I will be building on that page and hopefully get a shop up and running for everyone for all your herbal supports.
Awesome. And thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you joining us. And I'm sure this won't be the last time that we have a conversation like this.
Thank you very much for having me. Lovely to chat.